perfect. It's perfect. Well, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. And I'm so sorry it's taken so long to get this sorted. It's just been a really weird few weeks, actually. How's it been for you?
It's fine, but I'm here in my home studio. Everything's just a bit strange, isn't it? Everything's a bit upside down, back to front, and it's just the way we do it now, isn't it? But no, thank you, as I say, and the emails back and forth, and yeah, we're making it happen. Is it always seems to be the way people get there eventually. You know, it's just you just keep trying.
That's it. I'm going to turn you on your side there. That's better. I can see you better now. Okay, good. Is that messed it up for you?
It's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine.
Okay,
so
perfect.
How are things now in this sort of, as they call it, the new world? And take us. I'd like to know a bit about the radio life that you're in at the moment. How did things change when lockdown came in? And did you have to do much recording from home, or were you always in a studio, or how did it work for you?
So, well, we were in studio actually. Let me think. So, God, when was lockdown? Beginning of March? End of March it started, wasn't it? End of March. So I kept going into work until probably May time. And then they just decided, it started getting really, really much more strict, and everyone was focusing more on, really only travel unless you have to. And until that point, we'd been considered key workers because we're still delivering, the music, and everyone at home wanted to have some music to give them a boost. So they thought that we should carry on going into studios for as long as possible, unless there's some presenters that work on brands like Classic who are over 70 and they had to go in shields. So they were working from home quite early on. And I think that highlighted that it was possible.
Yeah.
And so we had practiced, we kind of tested it at home. And there are a couple of occasions where I was rubbish because we realized that my knowledge of technology was like level 1, and it needed to be a lot more intense.
Do you have a producer and things at the studio that usually pushes a lot of the buttons and bits and pieces, or how hands-on?
No, I do it all.
You do it all there?
Yeah, no, I do it all. So look, I've worked on Heart for 8 years.
Yeah.
And I had no producer, and I did a show 6 days a week on my own with no help. So I'm used to doing all of that. Okay. But somehow when you're at home and you're on a laptop and you're connecting to the work system and you're trying to speak to someone down the line and just praying it all goes well, it was a little bit more complicated and something that I hadn't quite got my head around, to be honest. My 9-year-old would have probably been all over it. It would have been fine. But for me, it was a little bit more tricky. Anyway, eventually we got there. And so in May, they decided that I could broadcast from home. And so I did for I think I was about 10 weeks from home.
And did you like that setup, or you obviously had to do it? You adjusted quite quickly to it, as you say, but did you like it, or are you the kind of person, because I know from listening to the Run Pod that you host, you get that run home, you get that sort of lifestyle, the fitness.
I know.
How did you cope, sort of being kind of cooped up and not able to go anywhere?
Well, first of all, everyone was working from home. So actually I felt like I was kind of abiding by the rules and, working from home where possible. So that's what was happening. I got into a little routine of getting up later. It was amazing for 8 years, getting up at 2:30 in the morning. And suddenly I was getting up at 5:30. I mean, I was rolling down the stairs. I was going into my little studio setup. The dog was getting used to having breakfast at 5:30 every morning. He had a little walk before 6. I mean, everyone was loving it. I saw my daughter before virtual school every day. I never usually see her in the mornings. It was just lovely. My husband would bring me cups of tea. I mean, it was a delight. But the novelty soon wears off, and you realize actually the workload, because working from home was a little bit more work intensive, and also it was very touch and go sometimes whether the links would work, because the Wi-Fi wasn't always the best. But it was, I would say 99% of the time it was brilliant. And then when it was June, when I ended up going back into studio, end of June or beginning of July, I was really happy because it got me back into my routine of going out running and going back. And it's so safe. Did you go out in lockdown at all?
I did. Where I live, I'm quite near the coast here in East Lothian, outside Edinburgh. So we were able to get to the beach, and there's a golf club as well. So we had a free range of the golf club with no golfers. So yeah, we did get to sort of do our bit of fitness and keep going, which we needed. I feel for the people, as we all do, that maybe we're in a tenement or a flat that didn't have as much open space. But when we could get out, we did, and we kept the fitness going, my wife and I, with the kids. And yeah, we just try to, thankfully, the weather held up. I remember the weather being so good.
Hottest year so far, they reckon, don't they? One of the hottest years. It was good that it was so nice, because it did mean that we could go outside. Yeah. But you're right, when you say anyone who lived, in a tenement or in a flat with no garden or no outdoor space at all, I mean, you did feel for them, especially when everyone was being, told to stay indoors.
Yep.
So that times like that, it's kind of like you think, God, it's really tough going. But at least we all got that hour outside. My sister-in-law lives in France. They weren't even allowed outside.
Is that right? Oh yeah, no, they weren't.
Yeah.
They don't have to have a pass or get a certificate or something to say where they were going. Or was that Spain? I don't know. I can't keep up with all this.
France. So she used to go out to walk her dog, and she was, the police used to come up and say, "Get back in." So she was allowed, like, in the actual kind of like just outside her garden, and then she had to get back in. And my brother lives in Cape Town. They weren't even allowed off their premises, off their garden, out of their garden. So they literally were trapped at home. And then it got to the point where they introduced the fact that you could go outside and exercise, but only between 6 and 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And that is it.
Well, about 3 weeks, a month ago now, my family, my wife and I and the kids, we got caught in a track and trace. So we couldn't leave the boundary of our house and garden for 2 weeks. That was hard. That was back to homeschooling, the three of them. That was back to all sorts of frustrating arguments and all you can imagine. We weren't prepared for it, and we just got the call, and then through came the text message from the government saying track and trace, do not leave your house, and that was it. Lockdown. Because
that's the thing, lockdown, where we all have to stay at home, but you're allowed to go out for an hour's exercise, you're allowed to go and get your essential bits from the shops. We can kind of deal with that because you don't feel trapped, but I imagine that feels trapped.
Yeah, it did. It felt rubbish, and we were good. We didn't go out. We could have, in the dead of night, nipped down for we jump in the cold water all the time and do all these sorts of things. So we could have done that and escaped, but we didn't. We stuck to it, and it was hard. But it was we didn't have Joe Wicks either. We didn't have Joe getting us through the workouts. You maybe missed Joe Wicks because would you have been on the radio when he was going?
I was on air when Joe Wicks was on, but I'm very aware of the phenomenon that was Joe Wicks this summer. My goodness, everyone was doing it. I know a couple of people that were doing it and actually got themselves injured because they found it maybe a little bit, they've exerted themselves a bit too much too. So, but yeah, everyone was doing Joe Wicks, weren't they?
They were. Was there ever a time when your daughter would sort of come in, or was she ever been on live radio when she'd walk into the room, or was the door locked, or how did that work with the family?
No, she was really good. She was doing her school. She came in to see me, and then sometimes, because I had the whole setup at home, she sometimes did a couple of little practice links on the sly. But my dog was the one that was the worst.
All right.
He would just barge into the room mid-link, and I'd be doing maybe a serious link, and he'd barge in, and he'd spot a dog out the window and start barking at it. I'd be like, "Oh my God, Alfie, go away." He was the naughty one. Or he would just lie beside me and snore really loudly. And it would have sounded like I had a rumbling stomach or something's really making a strange noise in the background, and it was my dog snoring. He's actually snoring in the corner over here at the moment. It's not quite loud enough to hear.
I did a podcast. I interviewed my 4-year-old son, my middle boy. I interviewed him for the podcast, and we got some crackers. I think he still does think the coronavirus is a spider. He was calling out his favourite Scottish rugby players, who I know a few of them, so it was quite funny just what goes through the mind of a child. Had him all mic'd up, had him with the earphones on and everything. I got about 15 minutes out of him. And
I love that he's 4 and he's got some favourite rugby players already. That's impressive.
Yeah, he knows them. He knows them all, and he understands even at 4 that the coronavirus is stopped, because we used to go to Murrayfield to go to all the games and the bits and pieces, even for Edinburgh rugby. He misses it at 4. He looks for it, and his little brother's starting to take notice and watch all the bits and pieces as well. But that same boy, Hunter, my 4-year-old, I had Tom Kitchen on for an episode, and I was interviewing Tom, and Hunter walked in, jumped straight onto my lap, and just sat in on the podcast with Tom. So that was kind of the nice bits about Zooming and podcasting through lockdown, that it just happened. And Tom's a dad; he's got 4 kids, and he knows how it is. It was great.
So I was interviewing John Legend, this kind of setup as well, and his little girl walked in to tell on the other one, so and so is doing this, and he's like, "Okay, we'll sort it out in a minute." Kind of like turned her around and kind of ushered her out again. It's funny though, isn't it? You get a little insight into everyone else's lives.
But that's a great way. I do want to talk about your virtual coffee breaks that have been brilliant. And last week, obviously, you had Robbie Williams on. Was it last week Robbie was on?
Last week was Robbie Williams. It's been really good actually. And Smooth just turned to me and they said, "Look, while you're at home, how about we do some interviews?" with other people just to find out how they're getting on with lockdown. And then it just kept going and it's just never stopped now. They're just continuing with it. It's been really popular and it's been doing really well for Smooth. So yeah, they've been very happy with it. We've had some great people from John Legend to Gloria Estefan. Who else I had? Robbie Williams, obviously Gary Barlow, Brian May. I mean, it's been brilliant.
Can I throw in Adam Lambert?
Adam Lambert.
I mean, to speak to him, and I watched that interview you did with him, but I've watched the documentaries. I know about the guy's background. To get that gig to take over from Freddie Mercury, I mean, what a chat that must have been. Was that good fun speaking to him?
Such a nice man, just so lovely, and just, do you know, he's so lovely. You almost think he's not very rock and roll because he's just so nice. But Brian May was the same. In fact, they're just lovely, lovely guys and really passionate about the music. And I mean, for him to get that gig is just massive. That must be one of the, when they were looking for someone to take over from Freddie Mercury, with kind of the gap he left. God, there must have been so many people that just thought that was the dream gig.
I like it. I think it was a Netflix documentary when is it Brian and Roger, and they just know instantly that he's the guy. Adam was the guy. They went through so many options, and then Adam got on stage, and his range of vocals and everything he was doing, and he could carry it. Being able to sing is one part of Freddie, but being able to be similar on stage and control the crowd, it's amazing how these people find where they're supposed to be, you know.
So true, isn't it? Yeah, because you need someone who's got amazing personality and charisma, and gosh, Adam Lambert absolutely does. Just so lovely. Everyone loves him. I've been on Lorraine Kelly's show a few times on Lorraine, and he's been on. She loves him, and I think he must be a regular on that show because he knows her very well. But everyone loves him.
Yeah. What about catching up with Robbie? Do you know Robbie Williams from years gone by, or was that a first introduction?
No, I've met Robbie many, many times over the years. So just haven't seen him for about 3 years now. But haven't really. It's weird because everyone's lives kind of move on. And when I worked on GMTV, I got to interview a lot of people over the years. Yeah. I had about 8-9 years working for them, and so yeah, I did all the showbiz stuff. So I got to meet all the musicians and the actors. So I have crossed paths with a lot of them before. So yeah, it was nice to have a catch up with Robbie.
That route into interviewing, obviously, a lot of people will know sort of how you got your break. And is it still sort of, you still talk about the Blind Date 1994 and that show of how you were discovered? What was the process there?
Well, I mean, that was, to be honest, that's the platform that kind of gave me the opportunity for everything else. So even though I genuinely was at school, went with school friends one afternoon after school, the audition, I was living in Reading at the time, and the auditions came to Reading, and we just went after school in school uniform to the auditions. I think I'd literally just turned 18, which was the age you had to be. So went and auditioned, got on, I got invited back to the next round. It was a bit like the X Factor, and there were rounds, thousands of people trying to get on it, and then there were different rounds. You had to then go to London to boot camp, essentially. And when I was there, then you're auditioned again, and you're in a room with other people, and you had to get up and say things and do little performances. And then I never heard back again. And it was only when I finished school, it was the summer, I got a phone call, because obviously before emails and everything, literally they phoned the house, and my mum answered and said, when you were out, Jenny, people from Blind Date phoned you. So I had to phone back, and they went, yeah, we want you to be on, we want you to be a picker. And then that was that. So I got asked to go on the show. And genuinely, I'd always thought it'd be quite nice to do some presenting or something. But I thought I actually was all set to go to university. I was going to Leeds. I was going to study languages. Genuinely thought that maybe one day I might go and live in Madrid. Ultimately, I would wanted to be an architect for a long time and do skyscrapers. And I just didn't really know. I was very vague with what I wanted to do. But when I went and filmed Blind Date, I loved the whole process. And I remember turning around to them and saying, I really enjoy this, and I'd quite like to maybe pursue it as a bit of a career. And how they laughed in my face. They said, everyone says that. Everyone says that. Good luck. Maybe try hospital radio. So I was like, okay, fine. So I went back to Leeds, where I was at uni, and I just did work experience at the local radio and TV studios. And then when the episode went out, I was invited on the radio to talk about it. And a producer from BBC Scotland was in Leeds and heard the interview. And I think there was maybe a shortage of Scottish girls on telly on BBC Scotland. And he got in touch because he worked for the BBC. And he said, do you want to come and do an audition? So I was flown up to Glasgow to do an audition at BBC Scotland, and I got the gig.
It's incredible that. And did you watch the Great British Bake Off? Have you watched the recent series?
I haven't watched it recently, no. But was there someone in that who?
Peter from Edinburgh, 19-year-old kid. He's just won it. And
okay,
like
so
through Instagram, through social media, I'm literally, and so millions of people are, we're currently just watching his life change in front of us. From that, he's gone on that show.
Youngest ever winner, isn't he?
Youngest ever winner, first Scottish winner, I think. And he's just a nice kid. And he's 19. And I think he's still studying, but he's just been baking on Good Morning America. And sort of the world's his oyster now, and which way he can go. And that TV show's propelled him, obviously. And he's been watching that show since he was 12, I think. So it's been a dream, and he's worked for it, and he's got it, and he's pursued it. And now it's just unfolding in front of us. I think that's just incredible. So you and your opportunity, how quickly did that whole thing from getting the job in Scotland, from appearing on Blind Date, how quickly did it really start picking up momentum?
Filmed Blind Date in August. It was on television in December, and I was on television on BBC Scotland, on BBC Two, an Old Alliance night for kind of Scotland and France in February, the day after my 19th birthday, so February 13th. And then in the March, I had an audition for The Big Country. So there was Doogie Vipond and I ended up getting the gig, where there was another girl, there was another guy who auditioned for it, both quite well-known names, to be fair. And so I genuinely never thought I'd get it. I thought the other girl would get it. And I think Doogie assumed the other guy would get it as well, because they were both, the girl was better known than me, and the guy was quite well known as a presenter. And so we just didn't assume we'd get it. But we both wore red. Apparently in the audition, I wore a red suit for one of the bits, and so did Doogie. And they said, you just looked right together. So that's when we both got the job. And then I did this show with him called The Big Country for 3 years.
Yeah. And what you've done travel shows, you've done all sorts of things. Have you been able to sort of start, or when did you be able to sort of pick what you fancy, a travel show, or move that way? Or was it just whatever opportunities came up, or did you get to sort of target shows that you'd love to present?
It's really weird. I think that what happens is you do have shows that you'd like to present. Like I used to always wish that I could work on This Morning, or do a travel show. Everyone wants to do a travel show, but I never thought that would be possible. So then I worked on Blind Date, and then I moved to Yorkshire Television, and I started doing documentaries for ITV and consumer show for ITV. But really, I still had at the back of my mind, it'd be nice to do a travel show. Eventually, then I got offered a travel show. I started working for the Holiday Show for BBC. And I moved to London, and I started working for GMTV. Never in my wildest years did I think I would do showbiz interviews. I never thought they would even be worth aspiring to do, because it's something that wouldn't happen to me. I got a job interviewing people, like movie stars. And my first day on the job, I had to fly to Venice and interview Clint Eastwood, which was pretty cool. That would have been 5 years into presenting at that stage. And then I ended up working for This Morning. But that was when I started working for This Morning when I was pregnant. So 2009. Mm-hmm. That came a little bit later, like 15 years almost into my career.
And do you remember walking into the room with Clint Eastwood on your first day, or your first sort of big Hollywood interview? What was that like? Do you remember the nerves, or did it go well?
Terrified.
Yeah.
I was absolutely terrified. So that day I interviewed Clint Eastwood, Donald Sutherland, James Garner, and Tommy Lee Jones. I was like, wow. Oh. They'd all done a movie, and I interviewed them, and Clint Eastwood was my first, and he was amazing. He was so good. And I think I might have told them all it was my first day on the job, so hoping that they might be a bit kinder to me. Tommy Lee Jones wasn't necessarily the kindest man, but the others were lovely. Donald Sutherland was delightful as well, but Clint Eastwood was really fabulous.
Has there been anyone that you've been completely starstruck by, that you've walked in or thought, oh God, I'm interviewing them, and this is the one I've always wanted?
Well, loads of them actually. I think because I love movies, and so when I interview anyone that I have watched in movies for so many years, it's exciting, and I am really, really kind of like in shock that I'm in the situation where I'm interviewing these amazing stars. But ultimately, you soon realize they are just normal people, and actually them being interviewed is a bit of a chore to them because it's their job. So actually I stopped being nervous, and I was once really nervous with Leonardo DiCaprio because I'd never fancied him or anything. I just really liked his movies, but he turned up and he looked into my eyes and I absolutely was blown away, and I didn't even know what to say, and I just kind of stumbled with like a question like that, and he went, I think I know what you're trying to say, and just answered a question. So it was just amazing. But it hasn't happened that often. It hasn't happened that often, but I have been in awe of the people I've been interviewing many times. Like Tom Cruise, I've interviewed him and hosted many of his premieres. And it's just amazing. This is Tom Cruise, like the action hero, you know, the person I've grown up watching. Say what you like about him. He is an amazing actor. He is. And he is genuinely always just been nothing but a delight and so lovely. So it's like he's been to PR school, him and Will Smith. It's like they've been to school and they know how to do an interview. They know to look into your eyes. They know to listen to your question. They might answer with a different, you know, completely different answer, but they make you feel like you are asking really relevant questions, even if you aren't. And they're great. They deal with the fans well. Really nice guys.
It's such a fantastic story that you've got, that from sort of 18, 19 years old going on a show, probably watching Tom Cruise movies back then, you know, watching all these Clint Eastwood movies, to the trajectory of your career, to sitting in front of these people and interviewing them and hosting their premieres and all these sorts of things. It's a journey that so many will aspire to. What was it about when you were told after the blind date experience, everybody wants this, go away, try something else? What was it that kept you going? Because a lot of people would have quit right there and just gone back to uni and stopped and just given up on the dream.
Uni, and I went back to uni and I did all my lectures and I did, you know, I carried on with the plan as was. However, on the side, I was writing letters to people and I was just knocking on doors continuously. And eventually the local radio station invited me down. And I think that not many people had a get up and go attitude, maybe. Maybe if they got a no, they'd give in. But I said, no, I'm not going to. And I used to write a letter, and then I'd phone up, follow with a phone call. And eventually people would go, right, just get her in, let's see her. And then I'd get in the door, and then that's it. I'm there now. I've written, I've phoned, I've come in, and that's me as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going back again. So just persistent, didn't take no for an answer. And I think as well, you've got to be proactive. So there's a lot of people that would love to work in media. It's a different game though now, because, you know, it's very competitive. There's so many channels, so many people are self-made stars through YouTube, through podcasts, through whatever, that actually the competition is so much greater. When I was, you know, first starting out, it was being proactive that got me noticed. But now you've got to have a skill, like Peter from Bake Off. He is an amazing baker, so he has a skill that will make him stand out from the crowd. I don't actually know what my skill would be if I was starting out now, but you've got to really just persevere. You've got to not take no. You've got to be proactive. I think that still applies, those rules.
It does.
And you've got to be thick-skinned a little bit as well.
Yeah, being able to hear no and keep going. Yeah, the sort of rhino mentality.
And also being able to take no, and that's no good. I interviewed Gary Barlow the other day. We were talking about the fact that when he was 15, he wrote a million love songs and everyone said it was rubbish. And the same apparently with George Michael. He wrote Careless Whisper in his bedroom and he wrote it off to sent it off to all the record companies. They all said it was rubbish. No, forget it. But neither of them forgot it. They kept it. They kept trying. George Michael's, you know, biggest song is one of Gary Barlow's favorite songs. So you've just got to believe in your own convictions and keep going.
Self-belief. And it's like J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter. You know, people said no, no, no. And then eventually the rest is history. You know, it's...
Oh, and that's what you do.
Pardon?
You just got to wear them down.
Wear them down. That's it. I want to move on to Run Pod. Obviously, I'm a big fan of your own podcast. But one guest that you had on, how did you handle it? Keith Lemon was such a fun interview.
Well, I know, do you know, so I've known Keith Lee, who is Keith. I've known him for ages. And we were all out, actually. So I said to him, do you want to come on Run Pod? And he went, I don't run. And I went, I bet I can convince you, because I thought it'd be really good to have a friend that you can convince to run, because we all have friends that don't like running and don't get it. So I figured that if you're locked in a room with someone who doesn't run long enough, you can convince them that running is quite good, and they might leave the conversation going, okay, I'll try it. So this was my experiment with Keith Lemon. And I think he was probably a good person to try with. It didn't go the way I'd hoped. I'd hoped he would leave going, yeah, I'm going to try running. But no, he absolutely did not. And the worst thing of all is we'd been out the day before to a big festival, and I have never been more hungover than I was during that interview. And my brain was hurting. Every part of doing that interview, I was just like, this is so sore, and I'm finding it really difficult to find a way to convince you that running is going to be good.
He was having none of it, but he was so funny with it, and there was times that you didn't laugh, that I'm crying with laughter, and I was like, she's doing so well to keep this together and not just be like, Keith, come on. It was
I
great.
know. I just couldn't make him, I couldn't convince him that running's the way forward. But it's interesting because the feedback you get, some people really don't like that episode because it's not very pro running, but other people see it for what it was, which was a bit of fun and just something different to add to the mix.
I thought it was great. I thought it was really, really good. And the way he talks about even riding bikes, and he looks at himself like a can of Coke, the shape of his body and all these sorts of things. It was just entertaining. But the Run Pod and the way you motivate people with yourself, your own story, your own fitness, and the guests that you have on, has that been a good journey for you getting into the Run Pod podcast?
I'm really proud of it. So it's almost 2 years ago. I was running home from work one day, and I just thought, I was listening to like My Dad Wrote a Porno or something. You know, that was the podcast everyone was doing, and I was listening to it. And I thought, this is massive. This is good. I get it, but it's not fun to listen to while you run because it doesn't make you want to keep running. It's just something to take your mind off it. But actually, I found that I needed something that was more motivational. And so I've kind of flicked around, and there were a few other podcasts out there, and there are some running ones which are great, but there wasn't anything that I wanted that was just motivational. And I didn't want anyone talking about the speed they were running at, and I didn't want anyone being technical. I just wanted someone to talk about how brilliant running was. That would keep me going. And there wasn't a podcast like that. So I thought, I'll just do one. I'll just make one myself. And so I work at Global Radio, which is where Heart was, and where Heart is rather, and where Smooth, where I am now, is. And I went to them and I went, so I know you're thinking of starting up a podcast department. How about I give you this one? Because I really want to do it, and I have no idea how to launch it. I just want to do a podcast. And it's going to be called Run Pod. And they were like, sounds a bit niche. It sounds like only runners would listen. And I was like, yeah, you're right. But I think there's quite a lot of runners out there. And they were like, well, okay, let's try it. And so I did the first episode. My first episode was with Ben Shepherd, who it went out as the second episode. He's a really good friend of mine. So I went, come and do this pilot. Let's see if it works. And it was amazing. We didn't have to edit it. It's just really good. And Global went, yeah, just do it. So I got Peter Andre, Ben, my friend. I got just a few friends basically to come in and be my guests and talk about running. And I genuinely thought maybe we'd have like 8 episodes, and then we'd have to do that thing where you take a break for a second series. Mm-hmm. And in the end, we didn't even take a break. We just kept going, kept doing week on, week on. And then it got to the point, and I was like, I don't think we're going to ever do a series kind of thing. I think it's just a continuous flow. And that's it. Been going ever since. Launched last April, a year and 9 months, a year and 8 months, something like that.
From people like Paula Radcliffe, Kelly Holmes that you've had on, someone I know as well, I'm going to get on the show, we've not arranged the time yet, but Nick Butter, you have interviewed some incredible runners. Is it improved your running? Is it improved your fitness getting these people in your world?
Well, it's certainly what I should be doing. I don't know if I've necessarily changed my ways. Do you know what? Having spoken to all these incredible people and being lucky enough to be able to ask them all these fantastic questions, which sometimes are totally biased because it's just questions that I want answers to. I do realize that there are certain things I should be doing that are, certain ways I should be training that are different, and maybe things I should do. And I know now there are ways that I can change my own training. It's just, you know, I don't know if you feel the same, but work, parenting, family life, all the rest of it gets in the way. And actually, so you end up just sticking to the routine of your own training. But I would love to change things up. I just haven't had a chance yet.
I'm very much, it's all sort of reactive to when time allows. If I can get up and out for a run, jump in the sea, do what I do before the kids are awake, it's got to be done early. So that's when I'm probably most active. And now it's darker mornings, there's even more excuses. You know, there's even more excuses. It's hard, but I think from who else? I listened to James Smith, your show with James, and again,
I've been a fan of his for ages. So I've been desperately trying to get home, and I got in touch with him a year ago, and I went, James, right, come on, and he went, but I hate running. And I was like, well, if you ever change your mind, get in touch. And then he started running, and he emailed me and went, okay, I've started running. I'll come on.
Have you seen his post today that he put out on Instagram about vaccines?
No, I haven't.
It's usual. I don't know James. I've interviewed quite a lot of guys and friends of his that maybe one day I'll get him on the show. But he put out a post today on Instagram. It instantly went viral, as it does when he usually does his to screen. And it was just his honest opinion on the vaccine. And so many people have their doubts about it. So many people are pro, and which way we're going to go with it. But it was just really interesting. It's what I like from James is he's created all this himself by speaking openly and honestly about topics and personal training and all sorts of things. Did you get that from him, that sort of vibe that he's just an honest guy?
That I love his honesty, and I love he doesn't say what you want to hear. He says what you need to hear, and also you might not like what he says, but he doesn't care, and I like that about him as well.
Yeah, he is very honest in that respect. Your recent episode that you released was a bit of a review show on Christmas stuff, and I see you've got the pods in here. You've got what are your essentials for running? What do you need when you go for a run that you won't sort of leave the house without?
So I do get a bit stressed out if I don't have earphones. Do you when you go running?
I don't tend to listen to anything. I'm terrible with the technology. So I've got Strava on my phone, and I'll have my phone generally on. I'll be carrying my phone somewhere. I don't even really. I don't have a watch that tracks what I do. Strava is the way I record the runs, and I like the phone as well if I'm going to do some, whether it's adventure stuff or the sea stuff and the bits and pieces that I do for content and things. So I'm limited to what I take, and I don't take earphones.
I like earphones because I like listening to podcasts, and I sometimes, if I'm doing fast running, sometimes I'll want to, like, I've just been at the gym and I was on the treadmill, and I like music just to keep the pace up. Mm-hmm. But and I now know which earphones to go and get from my review show. So it's been quite good because the ones I've got keep falling out and they're rubbish. But yeah, so I do like earphones so I can listen to podcasts or music. However, on the times where I've forgotten them or they've run out of juice because I haven't charged them, I actually really enjoy running without anything. So those are essentials. But if I don't have them, it's not the be all and end all. Silly things like, do you know what really annoys me? When I forget a blooming hairband to go to work. So I go to work, do my show, leave, and I'm like, haven't got a blooming hairband. It's the most annoying thing. And you probably won't get this, but girls will. If you don't have a flipping hairband and you're about to go running, you have got one.
I'm sitting here twiddling with one of my daughter's hairbands as you talk about it.
Yeah, it's so annoying. I now have like a permanent one on my wrist, just in case I start running, because otherwise it's nothing worse than hair going everywhere. So that's an essential. I like tracking it on, whether it's on my phone or on a watch or whatever. I do like tracking the run just to see how far I've gone. I'm not obsessed with time and distance and pace and all the rest, but I do like to just see how far I went. Did I do it in a good time? And just so I can keep a tab on it.
Yeah, in longer distances, I know you've done marathons before. Have you ever gone to ultra marathon distance or anything beyond the 26?
Well, have you?
Oh, there's a funny story. Yeah, once my wife and I did it. I got my wife and it was our anniversary, and I got us both entries to the Edinburgh Rat Race 50k. So she didn't speak to me for a long time. But then in return, for my birthday, she got me an entry to, I think it was a half Ironman that got cancelled due to lockdown. So that was perfect. That was a great result.
Right. I know I had an episode of Run Pod with Louise Minchin, who's the BBC Breakfast newsreader. Yeah. She's obsessed with triathlons. She only started them at 45. She represents Britain.
Yeah.
No, okay. So she's only been doing them like 8 years, something ridiculous like that. And she spoke about it so eloquently and so enthusiastically and so passionately. It did make me wonder if it's something that more of us should tap into. But I don't fancy the swim, and I'm not really a big fan of going on the bike. I could do them all, but I like the running part the most. But the ultra marathons, I think I've got a few friends that do them, and I know that you just have to run slower. But the times I've done the marathon, and every time I've crossed the marathon finish line, I've said, I am never doing that again. And then I've come back the next year. So maybe an ultra will be fine. But having done 26 miles and saying I'll never run a marathon again, I think it's unlikely I would want to run any further.
What are you like mentally when you're at the wall on a marathon? What do you go to, or what have you done in training that helps you push through when your body can do it, and you know your body can do it, but your mind is screaming, just stop, quit. Everybody has it. Everybody hits that wall at some stage, and whether it's 1 mile to 26 to an ultra, how do you operate when it gets really hard?
There are different ways of coping, and for me, the more trained you are, the fitter you are, the more mileage you've done, the more strength work you've done in your training, the more likely you are to be able to cope well with hitting the wall. So there was 1 year I ran the marathon and I had a pace. I stuck to the pace the entire way. Absolutely, the whole way stuck to the same pace. And I did start hurting probably about 22 miles, started struggling, but I just kept going. My legs and arms carried me. Mentally, I was so strong. I was like, nope, eliminate that thought, keep going, right? Other years, I have done really, really, I have a terrible training programs, not really done it. I've literally turned up and chanced it and lucked out on the day by getting round, and it's hurt. And I've walked a couple of times and I've been in agony. The worst thing you can do, in a marathon, my opinion, firstly, not train. You've got to train adequately. The times I've trained, it's actually just been a joy. Running the same pace, smiling at everyone. Yeah, it's hurt. And yeah, it's been difficult towards the end. It would be. It's not a challenge if it's not. But it hasn't been so tough that I haven't been able to finish and feel great at the end. The other years when I haven't trained, it's been a struggle. It's been really hard. The other thing as well is when you do the actual marathon, don't stop. The minute you stop, you might stop again. And that's the hardest thing. And then if you go back another year, you remember, oh, I stopped, and you're in the habit of stopping. So when you're training, you've got to train yourself not to stop. And that's a difficult thing, I think. Do you find that if you're out running, if you stop, are you likely to stop in that same place next time you're running?
The thing that came straight into my head there was when we did the Edinburgh Ultra rat race, there was the sort of fueling stations, and we could stop, and you would get a sandwich or you'd get a drink, and that didn't help me. Although I needed fuel, actually stopping and seizing up and feeling a bit, oh God, I've got to get going again, get the momentum, that didn't help me. Although your body does need it. You do need to keep refueling for when you go longer distance. I know exactly what you mean when you stop. My routine, if someone looked at my Strava, they would see it most mornings: run, dunk, run. So I stop, jump into the sea and keep going. So I like to run when I'm freezing cold at the moment, when it's uncomfortable. And I don't necessarily do 10 miles regularly or long miles, but it's constant. I like the discipline of getting up, getting uncomfortable and keeping going. So stopping for me is to just kind of get that uncomfortable, freezing cold, icy water, and a bit of a challenge, and my day won't get much worse.
Sit there when you stopped on the ultra. I mean, when you stop in the race, when you stop and then you have to start again, that feeling's the worst, isn't it? Terrible. You're like, your joints hurt. Do you find that it's like you're a tin man needing oiled again, and it takes a few minutes until your joints feel like they're oiled up and you're a bit more relaxed into it. But that's the problem with stopping, and your feet start swelling up, and it's just a big mistake. But yeah, I guess to win an ultra, you have to, I suppose.
I ran my first marathon. I mean, I only got into long distance running from podcasting. I've been doing this podcast now about 2.5 years. And I was interviewing a guy that had just completed a 100-mile race. And I said to myself, I can't interview this guy if I've never run a marathon. I need to know at least what the pain of a marathon's like, so I can kind of understand what he's going to talk about, what his body and his mind. And he was hallucinating running 100 miles and all sorts of stuff. But the pain after it and the getting up and down stairs, how are you with recovery? How are you with recovery after a long distance?
So the first time I ran the marathon, I remember not being able to get down the stairs.
Yeah.
Like, that was it. Just no way could I do it. And then there was another time I training for the marathon, I did 22 miles on the treadmill.
Oh.
Oh my goodness, because it's the same, there's not even inclines or, you know, like the roads and the pathways varying in kind of gradient. This was just the same motion. Oh my goodness, I was in pain after that. But otherwise, you know, I'm generally not too bad. There was one year, the worst I think I've ever had after the marathon it wasn't sore limbs, it was issues with my feet. So I lose my toenails when I run, and I mean, this might be too graphic, but one of the toenails.
I was going to bring it up because you mentioned it on the Keith Lemon podcast. You both had your toes out. It was brilliant.
Yeah, we did. But everyone knows, you know, if you run a lot, you'll know what it's like to lose a toenail. Mm-hmm. And I lost, so imagine your big toe, right? And it's come off, but it hasn't actually fallen off. All that's happened is right at the top, at the tip of the thumb, it's come away from the skin and it's re-entered your skin, but further down your toe. Okay, so it was slicing my toe, and it happened about mile 4 on the marathon, and I was like, something's not right. And I kept going, and by the end, I mean, I was in absolute agony. Got to the finish line, I took my shoes off because my feet they were really in a bad way, and they immediately just blew up, ballooned. And I went into the first aid place, and they were taking photos. The women there were like, oh, we've never seen feet like this before, taking photos. They were loving it because they'd never had to treat such manky feet before. And they had to take the insoles of my shoes out, bandage my feet, take all the laces out, so that I could hobble to my husband and daughter, who had now been waiting like an hour for me. And I think they thought something disastrous had happened. I literally just couldn't walk to them. My feet were in such a bad state. That's what I have. I don't have the aching muscles. It's just my feet are traumatized.
How, as we both know, Nick Butter, who ran a marathon in every country around the world and set the record and all these sorts of stuff. How does a guy like that influence you or inspire you? There are people out there that walk amongst us that do these things, you know, and you've interviewed a lot of them.
Italy.
Yeah, I know.
He's doing another crazy challenge.
Yeah, he's doing well.
Yeah, he's such a lovely guy, and he just loves running. That's it. He just loves running and loves seeing the world, and his stories are fascinating and incredible. I think that, do you know what? If you are single, if you have not got, you know, kids, if you are free and your job doesn't tie you down, and you have the opportunity to go and travel the world, and you can he budgeted it, he had family helping him make a plan. If you are able to afford, you know, that luxury of time to do that, what an incredible opportunity. And you know, it's more than just being able to make the plan, and it's more than being able to, you know, afford the time. It's also, he's got a really strong, you know, strong mind, and he's a really good runner as well to be able to do all that. But what an incredible experience to do. I'm not surprised he's got books on it, because it's just brilliant. His stories are fascinating. He's
got an ability. There's people that can endure, they can suffer and endure the pain, but he's obviously, in these long distance runners and these endurance athletes, the ability to endure boredom is so impressive. And I know that a lot of these people are running through really beautiful countrysides and amazing countries, but there's an element of boredom that when your mind starts taking over. Have you ever had that? Obviously, if you've got your earphones in, but have you ever just thought, God, this is just a drag. This is just the worst decision. I shouldn't have started this.
I have had many times like that, but you have to have something to plan.
Yeah.
I remember when you were doing the marathon, I planned my wedding. I was like, right, okay, so let's just work it out. So, I mean, I spent, 3.5 hours running, going, right, so bridesmaids, done that. I mean, it was brilliant. Just have something that you need to plan, need to think about, and you'll be busy the whole way.
Yeah. And what about wellness? When you are listening to podcasts, is there any podcasts you listen to or anything that you enjoy that works on the mental side of things for you, the wellness, and do you meditate, those sorts of things?
Not really someone that's ever been into the whole meditation. For me, meditation is just going out and running, actually, and getting fresh air, being active. The more active I am, the more the more I feel like I'm relaxing, actually. So that to me is my meditation. So yeah, if it's some sort of fitness, I will feel happy. Playing golf, for instance, that's another way I get my meditation. I'm not listening to anything. I'm just walking around, and I feel relaxed, and I feel very much on my own and in my own thoughts. And I really enjoy that. I do like a lot of other podcasts, but again, I like positive, upbeat. I'm trying to think who I've been listening to recently. I like Laura Whitmore, her podcast, which is, oh God, I totally forget. I never remember the names of them. I just put them on. Hers is where they review other podcasts, which is really good. I do quite like Paul McKenna's positivity podcast, because it's just people. They're quite short, but it's just people talking about positive things. Which again, I listen when I'm running, and I want to hear good stuff. I want to hear stuff that makes me want to keep going. So I enjoy that, and I do like Shagged, Married, Annoyed as well. But it's quite hard to listen and not laugh, because laughing and running is quite difficult.
That is a good one. I've listened to that a couple of times, and that the chemistry of those two is it's hilarious. It's a great show, that one.
Good, isn't it? I enjoy that. So that's what I get. That's what I get out of it. And that's, for me, wellness is about just keeping fit and staying active.
And what about Bonnie, Scotland? Do you get home very much?
So I want to be home much more than this year. I was meant to come home like several times. Every trip's cancelled because I'm not allowed in. Not allowed in. It's pretty hard to get there at the moment. So I'm desperately hoping that I get to see my mum and dad for Christmas as well. We're hoping we get to come down, but at the moment we're not sure if it's going to be allowed. So we're waiting to see. I was meant to come up 3 times this year. My daughter as well. She's desperate to get up, not just to see my mum and dad, but also just to get down the West Coast or just go for a drive. Just little things like that. Ella as well, she loves horse riding. Every time we come up, we book her in and she goes straight horse riding. She loves that. And it's just, there's so many things that we love coming up for.
It's going to be incredible.
And also just to get home.
Just to get home and home comforts, I'm sure. But when the world opens up, it's quite exciting that we can look forward to that. And, businesses hopefully get back to a bit of normality and things do change back to the way they were. But what I'm going to certainly do is hold on to the good things that I've discovered through lockdown. Is there anything that's really changed in your world that, if this hadn't happened, if the pandemic hadn't started, you would have just had another normal year, achieving lots of things, but it would have been very normal. Is there anything that's happened that you've thought, well, this is a good new thing that I'm going to hold on to?
Spending time with the family, much more time. We used to just cram every minute with stuff. So like my little girl would go to clubs left, right and centre. She'd always be at a club doing something here, something there, always busy. We'd be running around after her, dropping her here. It was quite a frantic life. And I mean, I work every morning. I work on Saturdays. My husband's working. He was working in an office. He's got an office that he goes to, but he's been working from home. And then my little girl's at school around the corner. She isn't doing clubs at the moment. And so actually we're all finding it's much more relaxing, being at home more, stress is taken away, we're spending more time together. I think things like that, I don't think we're going to be cramming as much into our days as we were doing before. And not that we've become lazy, it's just that I think we realize we don't need to be going here, there and everywhere every single day and filling every moment to feel like we're achieving something.
Mm-hmm. I get you. I agree. Life's certainly busy with my 3 and everything that we've got going on. They've all got their own wee individual clubs. So I get that as well. It's been nice having being home and just being around each other a lot more. It's forced us to create games and create ways to enjoy each other's company even more. It's been stressful at certain points, I'd say, but no, it's been great.
If I know how to go out anymore either. So this is the next thing. I don't think I've been out since March. And so like, if I go out, do I have to get dressed up? Do I have to wear heels? I'm like, sometimes I get dressed up just to go to work, just to make myself feel good. But yeah, it's weird. I don't think, I know a lot of people have been going out every now and again, but actually in terms of going out and meeting friends and just going to the pub or going out for dinner with a group, I don't know if I'll know how to do that anymore. It's been so long.
We need new skills or find the old skills that we thought we used to be good at See if we were any good at it.
Actually, we've become a family that is a lot better at cooking. So, I mean, I'm a terrible cook, but that's something we've definitely improved. I mean, we're no Peter from Bake Off, but we've attempted the banana bread and, a few other basics, but we are actually making much healthier, better meals now.
Yeah, soda bread, that was the one thing that I've learned how to do. So delighted with that. Soda bread's my go-to. I do a lot of outdoor cooking, fire pit cooking and all that sort of stuff. That's been really enjoyable for us to get the kids involved with that, and anything that's sort of hot and it's a bit dangerous that my two boys certainly are right in amongst it. So it's been great to have them around doing all these sorts of things. It's been awesome. But Jenny, this has been great. Thank you so much. I won't keep you any longer.
So much. Listen, Luke, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, it's been lovely chatting to you. It's very easy to chat to you as well. So I really appreciate you having me on as a guest. And I know you've had some amazing guests, so I feel honoured to have been invited on. So thank you.
No, thank you. And I've got Jay Morton, who I know you've done a pod with, and you're on the Fat Face with him. I've got him coming on next week, so I'm looking forward to speaking to him.
He likes getting in ice cold water.
That's what's going to be probably my first topic. That's what we're going to go down that road. But Jenny, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. Cheers then.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.